Hey everyone, welcome back to High Energy Podcast. My name is Esteban Gast. Thank you for being here. Today we're talking jobs, we're talking careers, we're talking passions, and we're talking climate. Of course, with us today is co-founder Green Jobs Board, Browngirl Green on social media. Every time I watch it, I'm learning. I'm like, it's so good. It's incredible. Climate influencer, creator, storyteller. Please welcome to the show, to High Energy Podcast, Kristy Drutman. Hi, Kristy. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here, Esteban. This is awesome.
I'm truly, truly thrilled because I've seen you speak in a bunch of places, in a bunch of conferences. You're like crushing, you're like telling everyone why climate jobs are so good and how. And it's awesome. But I'm so happy that you're here and we get to like talk about this with each other and with the good people listening. People who don't know, Green Jobs Board. Can you walk me through where that idea came from and kind of what it does? You know, we're starting at the 101, then we'll get into it.
We love a 101.
We love a 101. Green Jobs Board 101. What are we talking about?
Sounds great. Well, so Green Jobs Board started off as this idea. It was actually a series that I started on social media through my media platform, Browngirl Green.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, see, we're getting deep in the lore.
It started online. Yeah. On your incredible platform, Browngirl Green.
Yes. And so, you know, I built an incredible online community on Browngirl Green. And I realized something that was deeply missing from the conversation was that people didn't know how to get a job in this space. And I was even thinking about my own journey of trying to get a job in climate. You know, I went to UC Berkeley. I graduated top of my class with honors, all of these things, did every internship opportunity that you can imagine under the sun. But yeah, when I finished college and I asked my career counselor, I want to build a career in climate media, she looked at me like I had three heads. And I realized that I was going to have to build this on my own. And she literally said that. She's like, I think you're going to have to kind of scrapbook your career. And that's exactly what I did. You know, I worked for nonprofits and then for profits and then ended up becoming an entrepreneur because I felt really frustrated that there just wasn't really the type of job that I wanted to find in the climate space. Hence why I started my media platform, Browngirl Green. So backing up, you know, a few years, or fast forward a few years, then I realized that, I thought back to that journey and I realized I'm someone that is so passionate about this space and taking action and being an advocate. But yet, if I couldn't even find a job, how can we expect other people to want to get into the climate space if it's that inaccessible? And so it started off as a series that I started on my social media on Browngirl Green, summer of 2021. And basically, I came together with my co-founder, who's also my best friend, Usman, and we designed a series. We used those little carousel graphics on Instagram, and I just started doing my research because at that point, I had been in climate for, 8 or 9 years. I knew the types of organizations that I thought were doing great work, the companies doing great work in climate. And I was like, they must be hiring. And so I just started to research and curate, fellowships, jobs, resources I would find. And so it started as a weekly digest series that I posted online, and it went viral. It went viral beyond any of the content I was doing that year. And I was like, this jobs?
Jobs is the thing.
This is what is sexy to people on the internet. But it was. People were like, oh my gosh, can you keep posting this? And I was like, sure. So it started as a weekly series where I just kept posting this resource list. And it got to the point where companies, organizations were noticing how viral it was getting, to the point where they were like, could we start actually posting our positions on your Instagram? And I was like, what? And I was like, sure, why not? And so basically companies, organizations just started posting through me through a Google form. It was very scrappy. We were just figuring it out. And people were finally finding jobs and getting opportunities. I remember it was October of that year, 3 months after we launched. And this young girl who was also a Filipina, I'm a Filipino-American, she was a young Filipino-American woman. She literally told me, hey, Kristy, I got my first internship through your Instagram. And I was like,
that's so cool.
Crazy. And I realized we were doing something different because I realized, there's LinkedIn, there's Indeed, there's lots of these platforms in the world, but yet no one was reaching people in this way that felt more conversational and just kind of filtering and creating that curation piece. And so 2022, rolls along, and me and my co-founder launched this as its own Instagram page to take it off of Browngirl Green and just see could it stand on its own legs? And yeah, that it did very strongly. It got so much massive following and attention and excitement from people across the climate space, both job seekers and employers alike, to the point where within the first week of us creating the platform, we had 2,000 followers. And we just skyrocketed from there. And now, flash forward 3.5 years later, which is so crazy to think about, we went from an Instagram post to a company because we developed so much momentum and excitement about the fact that we were building something different, something that was community driven. And everyone was like, can you just make this into something? Like, can it be beyond social media? And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And yeah, since then, we've been able to host events. We've hosted our Green Jobs Pavilion at Climate Week New York City 2 years in a row now. We've hosted a BIPOC Green Career Summit to bring young people of color to connect with climate jobs and employers. And just this past April, we hosted an expungement clinic in Compton, where we actually partnered with some local organizations to help work with formerly incarcerated workers to find out about green career opportunities. And so I like to tell people our starting point was on social media, but now we've been able to leverage, digital marketing and media to really bridge the gap for people wanting to find jobs and careers in the climate space through storytelling, through media, and through intentional creation. Because I, as a climate expert, and my co-founder, who's been in product and tech for 10 years, we really wanted to figure out how we could build a platform to be bridge builders and really bridge the gap that so many people are facing when they want to enter the space.
Yeah. I love that. I don't think I knew the full story, which is so funny because I've sent Green Jobs Board to so many people.
Thank you.
That's because I'm sure you got so many more of these messages, but I get messages from like friends or friends or friends, and sometimes kind of random people who are like, "Hi, I want to work in climate," and I'm like, "I got just the thing," and I don't think I knew the full arc. To me, that's so interesting for what entrepreneurship looks like, and maybe even like activism looks like. That it's very iterative.
Yeah.
That you start here and you like listen to feedback. And was that, I mean, like when you were going and saying, "Oh my gosh, this is resonating with people. This is needed." Like, were you? What I suppose, what did that feel like? Did it feel like a runaway train, or were you like, this is part of the process?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. It was grassroots. So many people were like, can you please turn this into something bigger? And as someone who's been in the grassroots environmental movement for a long time, I feel like I've seen what works and what doesn't work. When things are rooted in community, I think it works a lot better. And I think that's why I felt really passionate about building Green Jobs Board, because it started in community. And I think that organic growth just made it what it is today, because at the end of the day, we weren't really seeking out to build a company. It kind of came upon us, and it realized that we needed to build something that was a valuable tool. So we were kind of the opposite. It was like we built something and then we saw if people valued it. It was like people valued it and we realized we needed to like build something. And that's why I love the story of how this came to be, because my co-founder, my best friend, he's not a climate person, but he is someone who cares about designing really cool, innovative things to change the world. And I think that those missions really align. And I think it's taught me a valuable lesson in building this product and this company, that we could be inspiring so many other people who don't maybe see themselves traditionally as quote unquote climate people, and to see, what are the avenues and the ways that we can translate and make that information more digestible to them. And I know it because I'm literally proof of concept. So
yeah, you're like, I know that's true because I'm here.
Right.
And I lived it.
Exactly.
I feel like so many people are like, we need more people in the climate fight. We need more people in the movement. And something I really admire that you're doing is you're thoughtful about that and not just being like, yeah, more,
right.
or wondering where are all the different types of, people with different lived experiences. And you're like, well, like you're not reaching out to them in a thoughtful way. Can you talk about the BIPOC career event and then the folks who were formerly incarcerated? Like, what I want to know the story of like how those came to be.
Yeah.
And for the people listening, I also want to know, like, if you're someone who, I think probably everyone listening is like, I want more voices in this. Like, what are tangible ways for them to think about it? Like, how can we learn from the journey you went through?
The BIPOC Green Career Summit came out of, an incredible incubated idea between 3 organizations, Green Jobs Board, as well as Black Oak Collective and Black Girl Environmentalist. And so we are all organizations that are thinking about workforce development, but specifically thinking about who is being left out of the conversation. And we realized we wanted to come together and figure out if we could put together an event that could specifically target and support, Black and brown folks who were specifically, left out of the climate conversation when it comes to recruitment. And why that's necessary is because, and this is exactly what started with Green Jobs Board as well, we are kind of serving as like a little bit of a climate confessional in certain ways, where I would have so many young people come to me, privately DMing me because they trusted me and said, hey, I'm going to leave this organization because I'm facing major microaggressions. There's no good pay scale. There's no good trajectory of growth for me here. What should I do?
Man.
And the amount of messages, I tell you, and I was so surprised. I was like, I can't believe people trust me as like a confidant, but it also makes sense. I'm surprised, but not surprised, because I represented myself as this very strong voice of like, the climate space needs to change. It is not inclusive. It is not bringing people from the most marginalized communities in, even though we're the most impacted. And why is that? And a lot of it was because you could get a person of color into an organization or a company. I'm not saying that that's the easiest thing to do, but like, you could do that. You could figure that out. But if you don't have a work culture that is actually supporting that person's well-being, they're going to probably face microaggressions. They're going to face certain slights with power dynamics in their workplace, and they will leave within a year or two and probably leave the climate space completely. And I've heard so many people tell me that story. So that's not even my story. That's like other people's stories that they've told me. Or even like getting, contract work. And there's like, people who are getting their rights denied, but then it's like, oh, but it's for a good cause. Or like, we're going to cut your pay, but it's for a good cause.
Yeah.
And there's all these like excuses. And at the end of the day, yes, we're not trying to say every climate job has to be the highest paying job ever, but we have to also be honest on the opposite end that some of these organizations and companies have not necessarily created the best workplace culture or recruitment strategies that are prioritizing Black and brown voices. And so BIPOC Green Career Summit came about because we realized, why don't we host an intentional space where every organization that's coming is recognizing that gap and those barriers and understanding that maybe someone who does come from a marginalized community needs a little bit more of that support. As someone who, I went to university, and yes, I had those privileges. No one in my family worked in climate. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't come from any intergenerational wealth, so I couldn't really do that many unpaid internships in this space. And so as a case study, as someone in this space, and now even someone who's building an organization and company, like, I'm still trying to figure out a lot of how to like want to keep staying in this movement, in this space, and to be resourced, even as a founder of color. And so I think about people at every single stage, from like when you're in high school to college to graduating to even when you're like mid-career or a founder like myself. We are at a disadvantage in many ways from a starting point. And I don't feel like people in the climate space always like recognize that or build the institutional capacity support for that. And so that's exactly why we wanted to host a BIPOC Green Career Summit, to be honest about that, to be like, how do you handle things like workplace microaggressions? We had a session on that. How do you do salary negotiation if that's something you were never taught in your family to do? How do you navigate, power dynamics and to really empower your voice? These are all things that we wove into. These are all things that we found were really necessary to weave into that kind of conversation, because if you went to a standard climate job summit, they may not be talking about those kinds of topics or those types of dynamics. Similarly, with the expungement clinic, that idea was an incubated idea with Repack, which is an incredible organization here in California, and also the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, otherwise known as ARC. We also brought in some other organizations like U.S. Green Building Council and Grid Alternatives. And the whole intention behind that event was that formerly incarcerated folks are, even outside of climate, are completely treated like second-class citizens in this country, especially when it comes to employment and having opportunities around workforce development. And we realized, like, they are incredibly hard workers and they want to find work. And we saw that even with the recent LA wildfires.
Yeah.
There's so many folks who were, incarcerated or formerly incarcerated who are on the front lines to literally save this city from wildfires. So I thought about that, and I've been very passionate about supporting formerly incarcerated workers, especially connecting them with resources around climate. And so me and my really good friend, Ken Wells, we decided to host this event in Compton, California during LA Climate Week. Because again, I was like, I love LA Climate Week, but I don't think there's a lot of events for formerly incarcerated folks from Compton who may want to attend some of these events. So I was like, let's host an event on green careers. And so we hosted it at the Compton Woodley Airport directly in the community. And we had tables. We made it kind of like a mini job fair, as well as like a panel. And then Repack came in and actually supported with an actual expungement clinic. So they're actually supporting these folks to get their records expunged, which could allow them to have the ability to apply for these jobs. And the most incredible thing at that event was, I was on the panel and I asked everyone in the audience, I was like, who here knows what a green job is? No one raised their hand. Everyone looked at me like I was, what? And then it was incredible. We did a panel, we did discussions, then we had people walk around, get pamphlets, do the expungement. At the end, I said, who here knows what a green job is? Everyone raised their hand. And I said, how many of you are going to actually apply to one of these fellowship trainings, these apprenticeship programs? Everyone raised their hands. And for me, that felt different. That felt so powerful because I was like, yeah, we shouldn't be giving people a choice between a healthy environment and having a livable wage. If we're being really honest about climate justice, we need to be creating solutions that have trifold impacts that can allow them to have, health, economic well-being, and safety, and be able to have that education to learn that those opportunities are out there that they probably didn't even know were possible. And so for me, leaving that day, it really inspired me to want to host more events with historically disadvantaged communities and figure out if there's ways that we can continue to bridge that gap through conversation, through community, and through the platform that we're building. And that's exactly what I get excited about, because again, I think about social media and how much it's been such a critical tool in my climate activism, as well as my ability to build such an incredible career and make an impact, that I feel very confident that the community that we're building using digital media tools is going to be able to bring in even more people into the conversation that probably didn't even consider this as an option to begin with. And that gets me really excited because I think that's exactly the direction I believe and hope that the climate movement should be thinking about and moving into if we're really serious about moving the needle and getting people of the global majority, which are people of color, into these spaces and to work in jobs.
I love it. Those stories are so inspiring. There's a few more questions, and then we have listener questions.
Oh, great.
Which is really exciting, and it's maybe my favorite part of the show is seeing what people ask. I'm curious in that, because I want to stay on this because I don't think it's talked about enough. If someone is listening and maybe they're a well-meaning white person who goes, boy, this is really great, and
yeah.
Like if someone feels like, oh, this is a thing I want to do, but I'm far from it. I don't know the resources, or who am I to advocate for this? What would you say? Because I think a lot of people listening are in the climate movement, are making good change, probably thinking about this, but have sometimes legitimate blocks that they're working through. How would you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the most important thing is that we need to have advocates from all different backgrounds getting involved in this space. So I would say again, we have to be unlearning this ethos that just you have to be a certain subset to be considered an environmentalist or to care about these things. I think that climate change and the climate crisis is a fundamentally human issue. So if you're impacted by climate change, you are someone that should get on board with this. And
if you are a human,
if you're a human,
welcome. You are now a part of this.
And it can look like many things, right? Like if you don't want to leave your existing job, right? I always hear that. Like, what if I don't want to leave my job? I mean, there's so many like opportunities. Like I would definitely check out Project Drawdown's Drawdown Labs resources. They actually help give employer resources on how you could actually think about greening your workspace and thinking about getting your company or organization to reduce their carbon emissions. So if you don't want to leave your current workplace, I would check out those resources. But if you are someone that does want to leave and have a more purpose-driven, mission-driven job, I mean, definitely check out Green Jobs Board. Check out a lot of different job, climate platforms that exist out there that are trying to make it easier for you to learn about what opportunities are out there. And I would say just like, it's really important for people to have those strategic conversations with people across the industry to understand like, what is your sweet spot of your passion? And I would say that like, it doesn't have to be a perfect process from the start. I think going back to your original point, I think a lot of climate advocacy, if I'm being honest, is very iterative. And I think a lot of people I talk to in the space who either started out or transition, their journey from step 1 doesn't look anywhere to step 10. And so I would say whether it's like listening to shows like this, checking out resources like Green Jobs Board, and starting to like piece together like what that path could look like for you. If I'm being honest, a lot of this stuff is emergent, even though some of these industries have been around multiple decades. Some of these things are just being invented yesterday. And so I think there's a lot of innovation and excitement. And I think if you're someone who like is excited about emergent technologies or the ability to really shift things in a meaningful way at a pretty accelerated pace, I would say this is the time to get involved, to take action. And I think we need everyone from different skill sets to be in that as well.
All right. Are you ready? We've got some listener questions.
Yeah.
We got a few of them.
Love it.
And then that's it.
Okay.
This has been so wonderful.
Wow. Delightful. Walk in the park.
I know.
Truly.
Yeah. Almost too fun. It's been almost too delightful. But here we go. Wonderful question. I haven't seen these questions, so we're reading them for the first time. This first question is from Sam. Someone named Sam who lives in Burbank. Okay. Who else do you think does a good job of making sure climate information and opportunities are shared across society? That's really fun. Who else? Who are you looking to? Where does Browngirl Green and co-founder Green Jobs Board look to inspiration?
Like I mentioned before, I absolutely love the team at Project Drawdown. I think all of the work that they're doing around employer resources to get people involved in climate is absolutely fantastic. Also, shout out to one of our partner organizations, Inco Academy. They actually have incredible certifications and courses focused on getting you a certification in green tech or in green careers, which is really incredible. The Cornell Green, like they do like a climate jobs institute, which is really incredible. And yeah, those are my top of my resources.
That's great. Next question is from someone named Sierra. Are there parts of your identity that you have been able to tap into more since you started doing climate work full time?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that question. That's so interesting.
Sierra's getting into it.
Thanks,
Sierra's
Sierra.
like, you know what? this is like
identity.
deep convo.
Oh my God. I have had to like navigate that space as being a woman of color in the space of like, how much do I keep leading that I'm a woman of color versus like I'm a climate expert? And I think it's that balance of like, people always throw it at you like, why are you bringing up identity politics or whatever? But it's like, but that is how I exist. That's how I'm perceived. That's how I like navigate the space. And at the same time, I am a climate expert and like that should be the main focus. And I think it's been an interesting journey of like, yes, my brand and my platform is called Browngirl Green. And I've leaned into that but I've kind of like been like, oh, like I just am that. And this is like actually my expertise. And that's like what comes with that. And I think I've really leaned into being like, yeah, how can I be viewed as an entrepreneur and a founder? Because sometimes I've seen myself shrink myself and like reduce down to like, oh, yeah, I'm just a content creator. Oh, I just make little fun videos online. And it's like, no, actually like I'm building impact. Yeah. I'm building tools and communities that are actually shifting narratives around what it means to work on these issues and to be passionate about it. And so I really had to tap into like my own ancestral lineage of like my Filipino identity and my ancestors to be like, no, own that. Like you're not small, like take up space, be willing to do that, raise your voice and and be proud of that.
Yeah. What does that look like when you're feeling unsure or uncertain or small? Like when you say even tap into your ancestral being.
Yeah. I think for me, I think it can happen a lot when I'm in a big room where I'm networking, where I'm asking for funding, or I'm trying to like tell people about what I'm doing. And I think that's due to a lot of the messages people who did microaggress me told me as I was moving into this space. A lot of people were very condescending towards me when I first was starting my platform before it was my full-time job, being like, oh, that's a nice little side hobby, or oh, that's cute, like very condescending. And then it was like, oh, wow, you're getting numbers like that with like the amount of people watching your content, or like you were able to work with this person or this person. Like, how did you do that? And then like, even when we did Green Jobs Pavilion last year during Climate Week, so many people came up to me and they're like, oh, who's your boss? Because they couldn't believe that I was the boss.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about tapping in my ancestral lineage, I realize like, the Philippines is on like the climate vulnerability risk index. It's like way up there. And, the Philippines in general, as a country and as a people, we face so much colonization. We face so much tyranny, but yet we continue to be resilient. We continue to show up. And so, I don't know. I connect the dots for myself in many ways when I think about, why would I be so small when like so many people sacrifice so much for me to like be able to be in this room? And I'm in this room for a reason. So I have to always remind myself that like, you're in this room for a reason. We don't need hierarchies anymore. We need people where they're at to stand in their power and their truth. And I think I've had to work through that myself. And I try my best on my platform to remind people of that, like through my own journey, that like, yeah, people always underestimate me, and I actually live for it.
Yeah.
I live
like, go
for
ahead.
it. I live
Underestimate
for it.
me. Make my day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love it. Okay, this is our final question from listeners and just for the pod. For the full pod, here we go. The last question comes from someone named Lolo. Do you have a toolkit for communicating the urgency of climate issues to skeptical family members?
Oh.
Really fun. So talk about standing in your power.
Yeah.
Like what happens if you're dealing with family members who, even taking Lolo's question, like and zooming out a bit, like maybe they're not even skeptical of climate itself, right? But being like, oh, you're going to get a job there. Right. My parents are immigrants. They're like, law school. You got to do law school. And I was like, what about stand-up comedy?
Right.
And yeah, right. And I like, and I got a master's just to make them happy.
Exactly. Story.
You do the
we
thing.
Know the story.
Yeah. What happens? How would you communicate or encourage someone to communicate with a skeptical family member?
I would tell them like if I was talking to an immigrant family, I would say like there is a lot of good economic opportunity long-term for you to get into climate. There's a lot of incredible impact that you can make. And I would say that like there is good paying jobs. So I mean, if you really wanted to research and dive into it, like there is good paying jobs if you really wanted to like, show your parent or your family member like, hey, I could be making this much.
Yeah,
like,
if this is what you value.
That's what I'm saying. So if they
we can get there.
That's what I'm saying. So like if they value money, then show them the salary. If they value health and they're one of those, they're one of those parents that's like non-toxic everything and I actually care about that, then connect the dots for them. So thinking about that, health, if they want you to have children someday or grandchildren, be like, well, I'm not going to have them if this is actually what's happening to the water and the air and the soil. They're not going to have anything to eat or drink.
Yeah.
Basic. So I would say meet them where they're at, especially if they're not someone who's like crazy about science. I would say lean in more into the issues of like, hey, do you like clean air? Do you like clean water? Well, guess what? If we don't address this is what's going to happen. And I think that actually could reach people more. And then also to just tell people like, hey, there is good paying jobs. Like instead of you working, as a delivery driver for X company, you could be making probably twice as much being a solar rooftop installer, or like, things like that. And, there's obviously like a whole spectrum, whether you want to go in the route of getting a degree or not. But at the end of the day, I think people just like want their families to have good lives, to have security, to be good, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if we go to the baseline of that and if we see the data, I think more people want that than not. But I think it's just a matter of, teaching people that like, in order for us to get there, like this is what it's going to look like. And we have to be honest about that. Is that going to be expensive for people? Or are there opportunities to cut the cost for them?
Yeah.
And I think those are some things that I always think about is like, we need to be a bit better and more honest about that on like, what does that cost for families? Are we actually embedding or creating policies that has those ripple effects that are going to make sure that communities aren't the ones suffering from those things? And so I think it's really important that if you are talking to skeptical family members to figure out what they value and meet them where they're at on that.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful thought of like, if a family member is skeptical, it's like, where's that skepticism coming from? Almost always like they're worried for you. They want you to live a good life. Maybe that's attached to finances. Largely that's like sometimes when parents are like, or families like, we want you to have a good life. You're like, you want me to buy a house.
For sure.
And with a room for you.
For sure.
You want a room in my house.
For
I
sure.
understand. Yeah, that's a really beautiful thought of like investigating that skepticism in a curious, non-judgmental way.
Yes.
Kristy, we've done it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for listening. We hope you learned a lot and were inspired. I know I'm inspired. We're going to list all the resources below, but specifically want to super encourage you to go to Green Jobs Board and follow Kristy online. It's Browngirl Green. I follow her. I laugh. I learn. I love it. And we hope you liked it, and we would encourage you to leave a review, subscribe, tell your friends and family about this podcast. And we love your questions, some great questions. And feel free to send those questions to high energy. That's HI, like high energy podcast at SoCalRun.org. That is it for today's episode. Thank you for viewing and listening. Kristy, thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yay!